This one. Yeah, it should be.
We'll see.
Did I do something wrong? No, it should be this one.
The display port. You need to be.
There it went.
Yep, got it.
Well, we'll see if I
Charging?
have it. Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's really working for real.
You might
Oh my
flag
gosh.
the system as somebody.
Yeah, and this
trying to
is a
plug
time I
device in.
didn't print out my special meeting this time. But it's all this stuff anyway. Yeah.
KG. Right.
Jumps up.
Oh,
No, no, no.
gotcha.
No, KG's down. I talked to Troy and.
Okay, good evening, everybody. The time is 6:30. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'll go ahead and open up the special city council meeting and call it to order. The time is 6:30. The Opens Meeting Act is posted on the back wall next to the agendas. This time we'll have a roll call.
Eight members are present, Mayor.
Okay. Very good. We'll move on to item one. As public hearings is ordinance 5724, adopting the 2025-2027 biennial budget statement, termed the appropriation bill. This would be for the first reading. So before I turn it over to Jen, I just would like to open it up. It is my honor tonight as mayor to present the mayor's and city's budget for the 2025-2027 year. I want to thank staff for their amazing work compiling this budget. We talked about when this started back, earlier this year, working with our department heads as well as city staff, going through their budgets with meetings with council, with the CIP being discussed here at the council level. So it's been a lot of hard work to get to this point tonight. We're able to present and have this first reading tonight of the budget. What I'd like to go over is just some of the, overview of the budget from my seat. Jen laid this out really well. Our four main goals in the city, values are fiscal responsibility, public safety, quality of life, and teamwork. And everything we try to do in the city, we look back at those four values. And so as we were going through this budget and that those values were agreed upon by the council as well as a mission and value statement, So one of the things that has been very important to me as well as the council is to be fiscally responsible, and this budget does that. One of the goals was and is listed: do not propose a property tax request more than the allowed by recent legislative requirements, and that's what this does. So we are limited by state statute on that, and we have been very conscious over the last 5 years on being fiscally responsible with tax dollars, spending them wisely. And this budget does that. It also prioritizes our people, and our people are our biggest asset, best asset. And so to be able to recruit and retain them, this budget prioritizes that. So we can hire, recruit, and continue to make the city of Fremont a great place to work for our staff and our community. We've also seen pressures with inflation. This year, we saw our assessment go down in the city. So that presented a new challenge that we hadn't seen before. As well as we're starting to see sales tax receipts begin to level off a little more. So from a revenue standpoint, that does put added pressure on this budget that's different than prior years that we've seen. And this budget, is able to address all those and still be fiscally responsible. This budget prioritizes public safety. We have talked at length, this council, about our public safety facilities. And so I'm excited about doing the groundbreaking here at our new police and 911 communication center in October. Very excited about that. And also plans for a new fire station on the east part of Fremont. And we've approved the engineering for that. So that's in the process, as well as knowing that our public safety facilities, being able to give our first responders what they need and deserve to be able to serve Fremont, is a priority. And that's what this budget does. We, as well as I talked about staffing, working with our union groups and going through those negotiations with them. That's all taken into account into this budget. We want Fremont to have the best quality of life, right? So we've done a lot of work on the library and being able to have the expansion. Now it's being utilized by our community. Now we need to continue to support that growth at the library and what they've been doing to be able to, library cards and all the new services that we were able to do in the new library now that it's up and working. Last meeting, we had the amphitheater where we voted on approving that and what that could bring to a John C. Fremont Park, and a lot of the upgrades there. And not just there, but throughout the whole park system. And, upgrading the parks that we have, making sure they're well maintained, making sure they have, bathrooms and all, that all adds to quality of life. Affordable housing, making sure we're able to support that as part of this budget. And also the transit program, which is a relatively new endeavor for Fremont to be able to take that on. I think we're in our third year of that, to see the amount of rides. I think we're still 20 to 25 rides. Be able to staff that, be able to serve the community. We hear a lot from people how beneficial that is. I was able to get to a doctor's appointment. I was able to go to the grocery store. We took that on as a city, and now it's being utilized and very successful. And we want to make sure that's sustainable, because that's really being utilized by our citizens. And then, teamwork, right? We got to do this as a team, and we've seen what we can do, and we come together as a community, being able to get our street maintenance building done. I mean, that was one of those kick the can projects that we finally said, we've got to do this. And now we've got a building going up, and that will really be able to serve our street department, our fleets. We're already seeing the benefit of having a fleet manager, being able to bring all that under one roof, and manage all the vehicles and assets that we have in Fremont. It's a very big job. This building is going to allow us to do that. It's going to allow us to be able to recruit and retain employees. And then, we're continually working for grants, and that is a team. That is an absolute team effort, to be able to look for them, be able to apply, be able to manage them on the back end once we receive the money. It just doesn't start once we get the money. It's managing everything that comes after that. And so, we're going to keep looking for grants in any way we can. We talk about the amphitheater that was served by a large grant, state grant we were able to get that project going. And a lot of that was because of the creative district. And that was another team effort, you know, where we had a large committee that met for a long time to be able to get that creative district going. And that really is an exciting piece. And then I added it because I feel like it's important, is a focus on street improvements. And we talked about this in the CIP when we did the 1 and 6 last meeting, is our focus on getting street improvement projects done. And the big thing we did, this was a 2020 budget, was it doubled the amount of money for street rehab repair. That's just concrete rehab, panel replacement throughout town. And we keep a list of those. We communicate with the citizens on, you know, where we're going to be doing those repairs and when. And so being able to double that, get more street rehab done. And in this budget, we have the Broad Street North Viaduct construction. We have 23rd Street traffic signal improvements, which I think you're already seeing a benefit from all the work we have been doing on 23rd Street with the new traffic signals. We talked about the 23rd Street concrete rehab work that's going to be done. First Street reconstruction from Howard to William, Luther Road South, asphalt sealant, 19th Street overlay from Summers to Nye, Deers 8 turn lane improvements. That's all in the 1 year for 2025. And that's a very ambitious goal, and we set ambitious goals to get those done. But that's also in this budget, is a focus on our streets and our roadways and continuing to improve those. And this fall we'll have Broad Street done, which I know everyone's excited about that. That's been a long one coming that we're able to get that done. But we are crossing these projects off the list, and we are, you know, not kicking the can down the road. We are working to get these done as quickly as we can and as cost effectively as we can. And that's all as well in this budget. So from a big picture, I think this budget hits on all these items. And again, it would not happen without the teamwork that it took from the finance department, from administration, from staff, from all the department heads. As you know, again, to get in those parameters, like I said, this year, it took a lot. I mean, there was cuts that had to be made, and there was tough conversations that had to be made to get to where we were today. And you know, that's important. That's our job, right? I mean, that's our job to do that. And so again, I'm excited to be able to present this to the council and to our community this evening. So, Jen, that's my kind of overview on it. I guess I turn it over to you to kind of get into more of the details.
Well, I'm more excited about it now.
All
Thank
right.
you. So Jennifer Knabb, Finance Director, Honorable Mayor and City Council, we've got for you the first reading of the budget. We've got a couple of different resolutions. One is the first draft of the first reading for the property tax resolution. And then we also have the budget resolution. So I'd like to, if it's all right with you, first go through property tax and where we sit there and just talk a little bit about that. And then I'll get into the rest of the budget as well. So overall, just as a level set and a reminder, is that we as a city set, which you see on this sheet here in the upper left-hand corner, how much we are requesting for property tax revenues. And that is our role, is to indicate within the rules how much we require based on principal and interest on city-related bonds, and also then the other property tax revenue that we require. We do not set the valuation. That is done by the county. And then we also do not set the levy, but that is a simple calculation of the property tax revenues that we're requesting divided by the valuation, and it's per $100 valuation, and that's how we get to the levy. So it's important that we all understand what our role is and what our role isn't, and as we go through this. That being said, on this page 5, we indicate what we are requesting, which is the property taxes for non-bond purposes for 2025. There in the upper left-hand corner, which shows 7.2 million. And then for 26, we have 7.6 million. And this is on a valuation that was provided to us by the county there that you see below that of 2.7 billion. And that is a drop from prior years. If you go to page 26, this shows what of the property tax that a citizen in the United States, we are in the United States, but in Fremont, what we pay in 25, and that's $1.55.9. Of that, the city's portion is the 0.248, and that is what folks have been paying for this year, what I pay, what other folks that live in the city pay. If you go to page 27, then this is based on again, we do not set the levy, but when we brought forth the budget for 24 and 25, in 24, people were paying 0.278 cents. And in 25, because the valuation increased so dramatically last year from 2.4 billion to 2.8, we did not increase our request for property tax revenues. So that dropped the levy to 0.24. Under the new rules and regulations of the state and agreeing not to go to the postcard meeting, which is in the green there, at the 2.7, our property tax request, that would increase the levy to 0.25, which is, 0.26, which is still well below what folks were paying in 2024 of 0.278. If we chose to go with the max we could do under the state regulation, which is the 5.17 inflation, that would be 2.69 cents. This entire budget was built on the no postcard meeting in the green. That's everything that's in there. But I did want to show within our power to do, that would be the kind of max that we could do is the postcard meeting one, just so you all understand that. And then if you also then go to back in the state form, which starts on page 5, that as you go through, there is computation forms in here, which is page 8 of this form. So if you just keep going through, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. This form shows the max that we can do. This shows that 5.17. And then if you scroll down, you could see what the max we could levy is there. If you scroll down to the bottom there, 2.497, and we're requesting 7.7497. We're requesting 7.259. And if you keep going, keep going, keep going. This is what we're producing. This is the making sure we don't go to the postcard meeting. This is the form that does that. And then final, if you just keep going. This sheet, when you're looking for where did I get all the calculations for the staff report for the property tax, this bottom section here, if you just scroll down a tiny bit, this is where you see the budget increase, the property tax increase of 4%, but the valuation, as the mayor mentioned, went down, and then the change in tax rate from 24 to what we're proposing. And then also on the staff report, if we levied our property tax based on the prior valuation, what would the levy be? And that is an important just thing to consider, is if our valuation had not gone down, it would make the request, the levy a bit lower for folks. So Valuation goes up, levy goes down. And I think that covers property tax for now. If we go over to the rest of the budget, there's a couple of things I wanted to point out. This budget is broken up between the city side and then the Department of Utilities. And if I just step back for a moment, when we look at everything that's in here, I wanted to introduce a paper. And what we're presenting here is first reading. When we come back next week on the 9th, we will have second reading. And we have, in the last number of days, recommended, Jody's put in a number of changes and reductions in cost, and you will see those reflected on the 9th for the next reading. However, we wanted to give you a preview of that list now. So none of this is reflected here, but will be next Tuesday. But to give you time to absorb as much as you can, we wanted to tell you what that list is. If we could introduce that. And then we've got one here for the public as well.
Councilman Jensen,
Motion to receive.
Councilman Sukram,
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
And the reason we're still doing this is that as you go through, the Department of Utilities is pretty settled. It is a good outlook. It represents exactly what we said we were going to do. It encompasses all of the changes we'd like to make. And there are things in the budget, like, for example, in gas, we assumed $5 gas, when right now it's more like $3 gas. However, we don't produce the gas, so we have to make sure that we have enough in the budget if the price of gas fluctuates. That would also then fluctuate the price to our customers, to our constituents. So as the price goes up, it passes through. As the price goes down, that also passes through. So when you're comparing the gas fund, what we're seeing today with 26 and 27, that increase in revenue and cost there is a reflection of our assumption, our conservative assumption, that if gas goes up, this is what it's going to look like. But hopefully the gas stays around $3-ish, and you wouldn't see that increase. On the city side, as we're going through all of the different funds, they're looking pretty good. But the general fund, we still think that there's some work to do there as far as removing costs. One thing I do want to point out is on the CIP for the city, you'll see throughout the different departments, for example, in parks, you'll see a lot of roofs being repaired. That is because of the May 2024 hailstorm, where we received insurance funds, and those are sitting in reserves for the repairs, which will take place in FY26. So we aren't just going out and spending a bunch of revenue, putting new roofs everywhere. That was money received by insurance for those repairs, but we needed to make sure we had appropriation budget room to do those repairs, and we will be doing those. We've hired an outside company to help manage that work. And so when you're going through and you see the reserves and all of those roofs, that is insurance repairs. When you look at the general fund, and I'm looking forward at, as the mayor pointed out, you've got limits on how much we can increase property tax. You've got sales tax that's leveling off. And when we look at the revenues for the general fund in all the different forms, not counting the grants that we'll continue to go after, when I look out 6, 7, 8 years, and I look at what the trends have been and what the new rules are, the revenue really is going to increase between 4 and 5%. Unfortunately, though, our insurance repairs have been going up. Our insurance costs have been going up 15%. Inflation, 5.17%. We've have new rules from the state as far as how much we're required to put away for our public safety folks for their retirement. That cost has gone up that we have to absorb. Just moderate, very conservative cost of living increases below inflation, that also costs money. And so overall, when you're looking at, if you're financially savvy and you're going through all 400 pages, you'll see that the cost in the general funds are going up more than the 4 to 5%. And my concern is that 7, 8 years down the road, where we can only increase our revenues by 4 to 5% unless something changes at the legislation, or we decide to tax more or whatever, and the costs are going up more than that, where does that leave us in 8 years? So as you're evaluating this, I would keep that in mind. And it's something that, that Jody, Jeff, and I have been talking about. On the DU side, we have the ability to increase rates. And so it's still a concern, of course, but that's within our power to adjust as the cost of sale adjusts. On the city side, it's a little more outside of our control. I hope that makes sense. So when you're looking at the general fund, I still don't think that's where we want to be. We do have reserves that we're using, but right now, there's still, I think, more work to do there. Jody, I don't know if you want to add anything else with that. Okay. And so that is why you're seeing some of these changes, and there may be more tomorrow that we add to this list before we finalize the packet for the 9th, if that makes sense. Going through here, then, what you have in this packet is starting on, if you go to page 29, you have the general fund uses, and intentionally, because we're using reserves, you we had budgeted in 25 to go into the negative up to 7.3 million. We're doing less than that in 25. In 26 and 27, right now, those numbers are bigger than where we want them to be, which is why we still have some work to do. We do intend to use, we're transferring in revenues, reserves from sales tax funds to help pay for all the capital projects. And you can really see that in the CIP at the bottom of each of the fund sections. So for general fund, as an example, you'll see how all of that adds up to using sales tax reserves and general fund reserves or general fund revenues. And in reality, if our operations aren't covered by our revenues, then there isn't any additional revenues to pay for CIP. That's how the math works. So going through, we've given you views, though, of the sales tax fund, which when you look at the end of the budget, the fund balance, you'll see that we do still have some reserves in the sales tax fund that got very specific uses there. The street fund, to the mayor's previous comments, we had quite a bit more in reserves, and we've really using more and more of that as we double and do more repairs. And the street fund, you'll see that the fund balance end of year in 24 was 10 million. That's on page 35. But by the time we get to 27, our fund balance is down to 1.4. And that's a reflection of all of those repairs and that work that the team plans on doing. For Keno, we continue to just As we get revenue in from Keno, we're using it for our, some of our CIP, and you'll see that reflected as a fund source. The airport, that one right now, to my previous comments, if we're concerned about the revenues coming into the general fund or the operations in the general fund, right now, with the projects that we've got at the airport, there's a lot of intercity transfers there. And I think we need to be thinking about and evaluating whether we can afford to do that out of the general fund, given what's coming, and also our limitations and how much the cost inflation in the general fund itself is. And so it's just another thing that we really need to consider, because that's, I think in the past where we've had lots of reserves, we've been able to support all of these different projects. And it's wonderful to be given and apply for a grant and get a grant to do something. But that 20% match, you know, we perhaps need to be looking for other outside areas to fund that match, rather than just relying on the general fund, which may not be there in the future with extra items. You keep going, then we've got by department, some of those expenditures that we have, breaking it up between personnel services, contractual services, commodities, and fixed asset. Some analysis there for you. And then moving on to page 63, you have the FTE sheets. And this is how much we've got budgeted for people on the city side, and then how much we're planning in 26 and in 27. And you'll see again on the changes that there are some FTE changes, adjustments that Jody has requested that will be reflected next week, reducing some of those FTEs. And then you've got, going through on page 66, you've got the CIP, and we don't need to flip through them, but the 77, then you have all the expenditure summaries by fund for the Department of Utilities and the Department of Utilities CIP. And then on page 306, we have the FTE sheet for the Department of Utilities. And you see the ads there, as well as we've, over the last time, we've got utility locators, we've got GIS work that we're doing, and then some, we've got now the fleet maintenance. Some of that is moving some mechanics from the city side over to the DU side, and those changes are all reflected there. I think I'm going to stop there and see if you all have any questions. I know this is an incredible amount of materials. It's complicated, and so I want to make sure that we've got enough time for questions for you all, and then also for the public.
Councilwoman Ganem.
Well, not so much a question, because you answered part of that in your presentation, because it appeared as though we had a budget total over the next several years, about over 7% increase. And you're saying too, because I looked at it and I thought that's unaffordable for so many of our average Fremont citizens, because Social Security is increasing by 2.5 to 3%. Our private sector increases for their wages are 2 to 3.5%. City employees, we haven't finished our negotiations, so I don't know exactly what that would be. Our utilities continue to go up because we have to maintain, and we have to update, and we have to upgrade. There's not much wiggle room in that part, but grocery prices still go up. I haven't seen anything go down yet at all. And you mentioned the 5.1% inflation. So I do appreciate the work that everyone has done in trying to pare this down a bit. but part of it was the insurance that you brought up. That some of that expenditures listed here, but that will be transferred from the reserve to pay for this.
100%.
And how about, how much of that is, about how much is that? How many millions?
Yeah, so on the city side, we have 2.4 million in reserves for the insurance repairs. We're planning on doing those. You'll see listed on the CIP right now
Okay.
about 1.9 million, but then there's also the cost of the manager as well, which LARM will, we're still waiting on positive confirmation there, but they've indicated that they'll, you know, for every building, if it costs 100,000, they would give us 10% to help cover the cost of that manager. And then when we do repair, there's of course a little bit that they hold back that we'll get as well. And then if the repairs are more than they thought, we would also turn that in to
Okay.
cover those. And, you know, when we have also under miscellaneous on the state budget form, we still have 1.5 million of the ARPA money that we're spending this next year to finish out the work that we're doing on the storm sewers as well. So that's also there. And then all of the transfers in for the buildings that the mayor has mentioned for the fleet building and then transferring in for the police station. That's all coming out of reserves or indicating in future years public safety bonds, which has also always been the plan once we use up those.
Thank you for the clarifications.
Councilman Horner.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you very much for all the material, and you know, this will keep me up for endless nights. You know, just a real quick question. You know, Sally had mentioned the 7% increase. I'm having a hard time tracking, so I am going to ask just if you can either confirm that or give me or the rest of us a number on what the change has been from the last budget cycle to now. And then the other thing too, just and Sally brought something else up that had been on my mind, and I was planning to ask, and that is talking about how it relates to individual citizens when she mentioned Social Security benefits and things like that, folks on fixed income. Is there anywhere in here, and if I missed it, I apologize, where this is maybe expressed on a per capita or on a per household basis, or would that be useful for us to express it that way so we can make it a bit more relatable?
So for the property tax section, if you yep, at the bottom of this one, I said tax on a $200,000 home, how much that is per year. So on a $200,000 home in 24, 27. Yep, so the annual property tax in 24, the individual paid $557 to the city. And now we're requesting they would be paying $521. So last year, because the valuation went up so much, it dropped to $496. So we're increasing it from $496 to $521, but it's still cheaper than how much they paid in 24, which was $557. $521 is less than $557, but it is more than $496. Yep. 5.08.
Average, not the average, a citizen, and and kind of what they're gonna feel or not feel or whatever in their pocketbook.
Yeah, every dollar counts. And we're trying to be
Okay, thank you.
as fiscally responsible as we can and still provide the services that we're required and want to provide.
Thank you.
Councilman Von Baron.
Yeah, thanks for the overview, Jen. And it was one of the things I appreciated with the inflation forecast. Both the city and the utility budget increases are beneath the forecasted inflationary increases. And I especially appreciate your tapping the brakes, so to speak, anticipating what's coming down the road at us, because I think that's going to be a fact of life that things are going to get leaner. So I appreciate the advance. I sent you a litany of questions, and we missed each other today. 2024 till now, roughly $110 million in spending. And I realize police and fire, and we've got some big expenses coming in there. But just got into what I was asking you about in the questions that I sent you, just overview. There's about an extra 10 million in other operating expenses, almost another 37 million in capital expenses. I'm sure it's in here somewhere. I just could you maybe just give me a quick overview of what those are, the big differences in the budgets?
So for the police and fire, we do have if we look at the old 2-year budget to the current 2-year budget, so 23-24 plus 24-25, police and fire, the capital improvements are increasing 10 million. And then we also have in the non-public safety in general, you've got another, 2.6 million or so. And again, some of those is the insurance repairs that we're doing.
Okay.
So that's
Okay.
funded there. For some of the police and fire, and you see that on the CIP, when you look at the fire station and the police station on the CIP, you see the funding sources coming from sales tax or reserves, or, you've got those pieces. If you go over to the CIP,
And I may have been looking at it wrong, but it looked like in addition to police and fire, there was something like 30 million in capital expenses additional, or did I just misread that? And I know that's a global question to ask you right now without a chance to dig into the detail.
yeah, I mean, certainly I'd have to see exactly where you're looking on what pieces. When I'm looking overall and I'm comparing,
Yeah, I was just looking at the macro numbers in each year's budget, year over year, just comparing the macro without trying to dive into the detail.
yeah, so when I do that and I look at the 2-year versus the 2-year, I see 10.3 million for police and fire. And I see non-public safety, 2.6 million. And then we'd have to go through, and then you've also got the insurance repairs there. And I mean, we can go through them. I mean, I'd have to
Okay.
see exactly.
Yeah,
what
and rather than
numbers you're
tie up
looking
time
at.
out, it's on that list of questions that I sent you. Just broad overview, could you just give us a kind of a feel for the overall compared to the last budget cycle about how much total staffing expenses have increased, operating capital expenditures, just ballpark? Do you have ballpark percentages on any of those?
The DU for the 2025 budget going to the 2026 budget would be increasing from 21.7 million up to 25.6. And on the city side, 2025 budget was 18.7. And in 26, that's increasing to 22.6.
Jen, rather than take it, if you want to just take a look at that set of questions that I realize it was a holiday weekend, but rather than taking time now, maybe we could just go through them roughly.
Yeah, we can
Just give me
take
a
those
ballpark
offline because
rather than occupying time.
on the other one that you mentioned, I'd have to see exactly where you're looking.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. With the holiday and weekend, I know it was difficult to do, so
Yeah,
we can
yeah.
just talk about those. It's on that list.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And the payroll increases, you've got the raises that are in there, which are well below inflation. You've got the state required pension increases. And then the additional FTEs are listed on the FTE sheets as well. And so you can see those there also. Unfunded mandates are challenging, yep.
On the capital, I'm just thinking here, I mean, it could be to where the extra street improvements could be added into that, or
Oh, for sure.
or it could also be the utility, because I mean, one thing we look at the budget is, it is combined utility city. So when you see a number, you have to make sure it's either the city and the utility or separated, because utility have lots of projects, horizontal well, transformers, tie lines. I mean, there's things in there that would have been different possibly too than the last one. So
That's a really good point because Councilman Von Baron's question was about the city side. And so I was speaking about just the city side and not taking into account, you're right, all of the Department of Utility bonded items on there. And those are listed for the Department of Utility. If it says UR as a funding source, that's utility revenue. And if it says RB, that is revenue bond. So that's very clear, the funding source for those on the CIP. And there's a table at the top that also explains what those acronyms mean.
any other questions from the council? Okay, I'll open the public hearing on this item. Seeing no comments, I'll close the public hearing. Are there any additional comments from council on this first reading of the budget? Councilman Jensen.
If there's no additional comments, I'll just make the motion to hold first reading of ordinance 5724.
Councilman Vaughn.
I will second.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor. Ordinance number 5724, an ordinance of the city of Fremont, Nebraska, to adopt the budget statement to be termed the appropriation bill to appropriate sums for necessary expenses and liabilities and to provide for an effective date. First read.
Now, item 2 is resolution 2025-225, setting the property tax request at $7,259,880 for fiscal year 2026, and $7,603,280 for fiscal year 2027. Any additional staff report from
No, I covered that
Okay,
earlier. Thank you.
Any comments from council or questions on this item? Now open the public hearing on this item. Seeing no comments, I'll close the public hearing. Are there any additional comments from council? If there are none, take a motion. Councilman Sukram.
I'll make the motion.
Councilman Horner.
I'll second.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Take a motion to adjourn. Councilman Jensen.
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Councilman Sukram.
Second.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
We are adjourned.
Have a good night, everybody.